Come on, your house is one of those shacks around here, right? Better, who at home? That's what Susan says. No, my wife's coming to pick me up today, I reply. She looks surprised at first, then bursts into laughter. No way. You've got a car? A truck or maybe a tractor? No, it's my wife's car, so it's not like that. Your wife must be broke too, right? She laughs. Just then, my wife Lisa, with a gentle smile, asks, I could hear your voice all the way in the car. Who are you calling Pooh then? Smiling relaxedly, Susan lets out a gasp, almost like a scream. I suppose the Johnson family is doing well. It seems you only come around to discuss loans with the Main family. No, it's not like that. When I said Pooh, I was talking about Tom. So you're saying you call my husband a poor man? Lisa's eyes narrow like a snake aiming for its prey. She's definitely angry. Once she gets like this, there's no stopping her. I just watch as Susan, who was acting all high and mighty, trembles like a criminal at the guillotine. My name is Tom. I'm just an average doctor running a practice in a small rural town in my hometown. Originally, I worked at a hospital in the city, but the hustle and bustle didn't suit me, so I returned to the tranquility of my hometown. There's a high demand for medical care for the elderly here, but not enough hospitals. I spend my days treating patients who come in with aches and pains after farming and listening to their stories. Then I receive a letter. It's an invitation to a high school reunion. I grew up in this rural area, the son of a farmer. The farm is now run by my brother's family. I didn't come from a wealthy family, and my parents and older brother were kind, but because of that, I always felt apologetic. I was physically weak and couldn't help around the house, so I focused on my studies. I got into a prestigious university, but my goal was medical school. Though I had given up on it due to budget constraints, my parents sold some of our land, and my brother even broke into his savings to gather the money for me. I accepted it with tears and set off alone for the university in the city. Life there was tough. I rented a cheap apartment and worked part-time while attending college. I studied late into the night to keep up with my classes. I must have been really exhausted. One day, a beautiful woman sat in front of me in the cafeteria while I was just drinking water with a pale face. She turned out to be my future wife. She was studying in the economics department and seemed to have been looking out for me, who sometimes sat there alone, idle as sipping water. I was worried because you always looked tired. Sorry for that. No need to apologize. I was captivated by her laughter. We introduced ourselves to each other and gradually became friends, often chatting in the same way. Before I knew it, we fell in love. Having a girlfriend lit a fire under my motivation. I aced both my job and studies, gaining a lot of knowledge. She, understanding my plight as a poor student, prepared homemade lunches for me every day and earnestly took care of me when I felt sick and caught colds easily. I felt guilty for relying on her so much. I love you because you're always trying hard, she said, smiling. So a girlfriend and I graduated and got married. My parents were surprised that I got married right after graduation, and my brother laughed at me, but everyone attended our wedding and celebrated with us. After working for about 20 years in a hospital in the city, I couldn't maintain my health in the urban environment and decided to return to my hometown for treatment. My old classmates back home were surprised that I returned as a doctor, but they welcomed me warmly. I was looking forward to this reunion as a local to meet classmates who had gone to the city. I was eagerly awaiting that day. This year's reunion turned out to be larger than expected. When I mentioned I hadn't expected it to be big enough to book an entire banquet hall at the hotel, my local classmates laughed and said, "It's because Susan is coming." Susan. Who was that again? I searched my memory. You were often absent, Tom, so you might not remember her. She was beautiful, a genius, the belle of our class. That makes sense. Her attendance must have attracted many others, I realized. My classmates looked at me in amazement. What's up? Well, Tom, Susan saw you as a big rival. You were always top of the class. Really? Back then I was just focused on studying, working too hard, and often getting sick, so I didn't interact much with anyone except close friends. The classmates I'm talking to now are ones I started speaking with after returning to the countryside. Returning home, I got to talk to people I couldn't during my desperate younger years, and ended up with more friends than I had in my youth or while living in the city. I'm satisfied with my current situation. As more people started arriving, a commotion arose at the entrance. I wondered what was happening when a glamorous beauty entered, accompanied by several men. I see, she must be Susan. She was indeed beautiful. But to me, my wife is the most beautiful. Please find a seat. Start from the back. There's no particular seating arrangement. That's how it is at a rural reunion. But then Susan glared sharply at me. After scrutinizing me, she said in a cool tone, "Are you Tom by any chance?" We weren't close enough to be on a first-name basis. To me, Susan was almost like a stranger. "Long time no see, Susan. You remember my name?" Susan said with a snort. "Yes," I said vaguely, but Susan didn't seem to care. "Then why didn't you come to greet me? If you knew I was coming, it's only proper to greet me, right?" Sorry, overwhelmed by Susan's forcefulness. I inadvertently apologized to her, but was there any reason to apologize? However, her entourage behind her echoed her sentiments, agreeing with her. This is what I dislike. Poor people, they have no manners. While my family wasn't wealthy, I wondered what she meant. A classmate whispered to me, "Susan comes from a prestigious family." That made sense. Someone born into such a family might look down on someone from a farming background like me. It's a common story in the countryside. Indeed, landlords often have more power than tenant farmers. Susan must have had that kind of elitist mindset. "So where is my seat?" she asked sharply, and I explained that there was no specific seating arrangement. "You can choose any seat from the inside." Just as I said that, Susan stamped her foot in frustration. "There's no seat reserved for me." Unbelievable. She scanned the room, looked at the arranged tables, and signaled something to a man behind her. "Well, what are you?" "I'm having them make a seat of honor for me. Isn't that obvious?" "But there's no need to make a seat of honor. Susan is a member of the Johnson family. Don't let a poor person interfere." Feeling pressured by the men surrounding Susan, I held my tongue. "Don't worry about it. They've always been like that," I said. My friend patted me on the shoulder as if to comfort me. A special seat was set up at the head of the table. Rows of people gathered around, and as if she was the birthday girl, Susan looked on with satisfaction. "You knew I was coming, right? You should have been more considerate." She threw the words at me irritably and sat down in the seat as if it was her due. Her followers surrounded her, occupying nearby seats. People who had arrived early and taken seats were displaced as if they were being chased away. Frustrated by the arrogant behavior, I felt exasperated. Thankfully, those who moved didn't seem bothered. It's just how Susan is, they didn't seem to mind. As more guests arrived, the seats filled up quickly. After Susan gave the opening remarks, everyone started to drink, eat, and gradually began moving around, chatting and enjoying themselves. I was talking with a friend I got along with when suddenly my shoulder was firmly pulled. Turning around, I saw one of Susan's followers. "Susan is calling you. Come." Before I could respond, I was pulled by the man and found myself in front of Susan. She silently pointed to her empty glass. Confused, I didn't understand what she wanted. Seeing my confusion, Susan snapped irritably, "Hello? Can you see? Pour me a drink." Startled by her shout, I hastily grabbed a beer nearby. But Susan frowned even more and glared at me. "You're serving me such cheap beer? But this is all they have for the party. Never mind, just bring me something worthy of me." With the fierce energy of Susan, who seemed like she might throw her glass at me, I escaped to order some drinks from the waitress. Returning with her apparent favorite wine in glasses, I approached Susan again. Susan snatched a glass from me as if that was expected and held it out. I silently poured wine into her glass. "It's better than I thought you'd bring. It seems the wine I got after checking with the waitress passed her test. Poor people like you haven't seen wine like this, right?" "I don't mind sharing." Saying this, Susan tilted her glass of wine. "Here, have a taste. This is a wine someone like you wouldn't drink even once in a lifetime." I felt uncomfortable with Susan's behavior, laughing mockingly. This wine was crafted with care by artisans and prepared by the hotel to satisfy guests. Treating it like this was just wrong. I thought about saying something, but my friend quietly stopped me. The waitress waiting in the background quietly cleaned up the spilled wine. Come to think of it, this friend's family owns a brewery. Feeling helpless, I watched this scene. Susan has always been imperious, even since our student days. Nobody criticized her behavior. She either made a scene with her entourage or kept a low profile, quietly enjoying the party from a distance. That's how the group was divided. It's a shame because I was looking forward to enjoying a friendly and harmonious atmosphere with everyone. I wanted to return to a modest group with my friend, but Susan and her entourage wouldn't let me leave. They kept pestering me, making snide remarks and looking down on me. It's pathetic, isn't it? No matter how well you did in school, in the end, a poor person remains a poor person. Susan laughed mockingly, and her followers joined in. I graduated from Harvard University. You know what? What you did in school doesn't matter as much as what you've achieved in the end. Susan's words made her followers fully convinced, and even those who were just listening raised their voices in admiration at the fact that she graduated from Harvard University. Ultimately, there's a difference between people like you who just became a local doctor and us. Know your place. Even when she said that, I found myself at a loss for how to respond. Why is Susan so intent on looking down on me? Truly great people, people of a different class, don't behave in such a tasteless manner. But in this hometown, she's been treated like a princess. She must not be able to shake off that feeling. As a classmate, I worry whether she isn't embarrassed to behave like this. In a rage, but if I were to say such a thing, I could clearly see her getting furious. That would ruin the reunion. After all, Susan and her entourage probably only came to prop her up, and if this can just end without incident, then being ridiculed is not a big deal. I endured the disdainful remarks, just letting them wash over me as Susan dominated the reunion. Finally, the reunion ended, and everyone started heading home. Those living nearby walked, while those from the city stayed at the hotel. As for me, a local my home was a bit far. What's wrong? Your house is one of those shacks around here, right? Just walk back. That's what Susan said. No, my wife is picking me up today. At that, she looked surprised, then burst into laughter. What? You have a car? A mini truck or maybe a tractor? No, it's my wife's car, so it's not like that. Your wife must be poor too, huh? The moment she said that, I couldn't help but get angry. I could tolerate her bad-mouthing me, but not my wife. When I thought that, a strong light illuminated us. Then a car, that was clearly a luxury car, stopped in front of me. What? What is this? Susan looked confused as I waved. It was Lisa's car. Lisa, come over here. When I called her, a woman with more grace than the car itself stepped out. What? Your wife drives that. Is there a problem with my car? Lisa responded to Susan's remark. Seeing Lisa arrive in the luxury car, Susan began to tremble. Tom, did you enjoy the reunion? Lisa asked me with a wry smile. Yeah, sort of. Lisa, sensing something from my wry smile, turned her gaze to Susan. Oh, I thought you looked familiar. Aren't you the daughter of the Johnson family, a Branch family? Do you need something from my husband? Susan's shoulders twitched when Lisa spoke to her. Your husband? This man is from the main family. Who are you referring to as this man? Lisa's voice was stern in response to Susan's words. Susan, shrinking in fear, continued with a trembling voice. So, you mean you, the Smith family's daughter, are married to Tom? But your last names are different. This must be some joke, right? Lisa answered calmly to Susan's blistered voice. We use different surnames due to our work. It's not uncommon these days, is it? Lisa, as if exasperated, stared down Susan. By the way, I heard your voice all the way inside the car. Who did you say was poor? Lisa smiled chillingly. Susan let out a whimper. Well, the Johnson family must be doing very well, right? I thought you often came to the main family asking for loans. It's not like that. When I said poor person, I meant Tom. So we were saying, you called my husband a poor person. Lisa's eyes narrowed sharply. They were like the eyes of a snake set on its prey. She was truly angry. Once Lisa got like this, she couldn't be stopped. I just watched. Susan, who had been acting all high and mighty, was now trembling like a criminal at the guillotine. After a while, Susan, still trembling, seemed to gather her courage and looked up. I still can't accept it. Why him? He's just a poor country boy. He's not worthy of the Smith family. Really, your birth and upbringing don't matter. I was drawn to his character. And you think he looks poor? Lisa gently wrapped her arm around mine and looked up at me. I simply responded with a smile. That's because of the Smith family's wealth, right? That's not true. What do you mean? How can he afford such a car with his own wealth? Oh dear, what are you talking about? Lisa said, lightly holding her forehead. Do you even know how he became a doctor? Well, he must have graduated from some local university. Susan hesitated. Lisa pressed on. Yes, we met at a university in the city. What? I didn't know that. You didn't ask me. I answered Susan's question smoothly. With my parents' and brother's support, I managed to study at the university I wanted to in the city. I graduated from its medical school and worked at a university hospital for a while. Susan's eyes widened and her lips trembled. Apparently, she had imagined me as a country doctor with a medical degree from a local university. Tom, don't be modest. Your achievements at the hospital and in academic societies have been outstanding, haven't they? Lisa's words made Susan grind her teeth and groan. But that means you received support, right? You just climbed up using the Smith family's assets and reputation. At those words, Lisa's face turned fierce. She stamped the ground as if about to break her heels. I can't ignore what you've been saying. Susan shrank back at Lisa's intensity. Seizing the moment, Lisa continued, I've been with Tom since university, and he never relied on my family. In fact, he's been careful not to let my name hinder him. That can't be. Certainly, you graduated from Harvard University. And then, what have you achieved since? Lisa's words made Susan groan. I've heard about the talented Miss Johnson from Harvard University. But that's all, isn't it? That's not true. After graduating, I worked at a big corporation. Just working there, right? No significant position or achievements that I've heard of. Lisa's words left Susan speechless. Tom indeed lived a modest life. However, he and his family, with their diligence and integrity, have achieved success. Tom's family did that. I never heard such a thing. Aren't you aware of his family's situation? Lisa tilted her head quizzically. His family successfully bred a new variety of vegetables and will soon launch it as a brand. What? But his family's fields are so small. Susan's voice rose in panic, and Lisa laughed merrily. Yes, to support Tom, they sold part of their land and succeeded in creating a rare variety from the remaining smaller field. That's right. My parents sold part of the field for me and tried new vegetable combinations with what was left. It was my brother's idea. Initially, there were many failures, and life was tough. But now, they are the only farmers producing a prestigious brand of vegetables. Tom could have become a hospital director with his credentials, if not for his health issues. Why is he a small-town practitioner then? I asked him to, concerned about his health. And though you call it a small practice, Tom still publishes papers in various academic societies. I didn't know that. Somehow, whenever Lisa spoke about our family, she had a triumphant look on her face, which finally made Susan start crying. Lisa, let's stop it there. I'm embarrassed too. No way, Tom. You never boast about yourself, so I'll take this chance to brag a lot for you. With a sulky attitude, I never managed to win against Lisa anyway. Susan, can't we stop this kind of thing? At my words, Susan turned her tearful eyes towards me. What do you mean? In a spiritless voice, she answered, and I slowly added to my words. Susan, you never lost, did you? That's why you were upset about always losing to me in studies during our school days. That's right. So what? I think it's amazing that you used that frustration as a springboard to pass Harvard University. Surprised by my words, Susan looked at me. But you were satisfied with just that, weren't you? What are you trying to say? After graduation, I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to learn more, to work to help people, and above all, I wanted to give back to my family. Susan silently listened to my story. I smiled gently at her. Because I'm greedy, I wanted to become a doctor, help people, repay my family, and marry Lisa. So I've always been running with an eye on the future. Are you saying I've stopped? Isn't that the case? You graduated from Harvard University, got a job at a big company, and were satisfied. Susan's face twisted in frustration, as if I hit the mark. I have overcome a lot, but I wasn't physically strong, got tired of working hard, and returned to my hometown. surrounded by fields in a small town. I decided to support the people of this land for the rest of my life. What did you want to do when you enrolled in university, Susan? What do you want to do in your current company? I want you to take your time to think about that. As I said this, Lisa gently pulled my arm, leaving Susan, who continued to cry, crouched down. We got in the car and headed home of my peaceful and serene rural town. I watched the lively people working in the fields from my office window. Hey Lisa, are you really okay with this? Coming to such a rural town with me? I chose this. Plus, I can do most of my work remotely. She graduated from the economics department, started a business, and is now the president of a big company. Yet she reformed most of her work to be remote and followed me to this rural town. We both travel to the city for important conferences or meetings, but generally, we face each other in our office, each doing our work. A refreshing breeze enters through the window, fluttering the curtains. A peaceful and serene slow life. This is the shape of my happiness.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" "Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike! What have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that?" "Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.